All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Williamson County School Board meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to start with recording the attendance for the board members.
There are 12 members present.
Next on the agenda, we are going to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Board Member Eric Welch, and we'll follow that by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I just want to acknowledge and thank our Deputy Jay Conkin, Corporal Eddie Kutras, and Deputy Randy Purcell for being here with us tonight. Thank you so much. And we'd like to start our board meeting with items of particular public interest. And tonight we have 3 members of the public who've signed up to speak with us. And each member is given 3 minutes to speak. And as you come up to speak with us, you can see your time on the screen in front of you. The first individual who will speak with us is Henson Preston.
About my daughter, who's a 3rd grader at Bethesda. There is an issue, some of you may know me from my emails, about a particular flag of gay pride. I'm just here to voice my opinion that I think at that age, that shouldn't be allowed. We should just have the American flag, the Tennessee flag. But it really, my daughter comes home and asks me about it. I shouldn't have to explain that to my daughter at that age. I understand when you get older, you start understanding those things. So I'm just here. I would like to have a vote or something we could do to not have that allowed in a elementary setting because they're too young. They're sponges. They see it. It becomes normalized to them. It just really hurts me that I have to have that discussion with a 3rd grader about a certain flag. And they're curious. They want to know. And it's offensive to us. I know it's not to some, but a majority of us it is. So I would please ask if we could address it and move on from there. Just remove all that type of stuff. So thank you for your time.
Our next guest is Carol Newhouser.
Before you start timing me, I just have one thing to say. My husband said, give them no-dose pills, so you're not so bored. So stay awake, people. Okay, my name is Carol Newhouser, and I'm a resident. Besides being a resident, I have a doctorate in early childhood curriculum. I've taught young children, I've taught graduate students, and I've taught postgraduate students, and I've had early childhood up to here. So I know that school boards generally do not discuss curriculum, but I started 9 months ago trying to unravel what we have a problem as a state, and that is why are so many of our children not being able to pass the 3rd grade test. So I went back and I got a lot of textbooks. I went to Peabody Library. I'll show you the book on neurological development. And this is what I'm here to say. This is how children learn. And I know this is what I'm saying about brain development is going to affect you people as much as it is me. Okay, how does our brain develop? It is the automatic processing of the neural sensory systems of the infant and the young child that comprises the building blocks of the cognitive system. The hardware of brain development comes internally. The brain maintains plasticity, but it is harder to learn something after the brain has conceptualized certain ideas. The most important time, and this is a real surprise to everybody, and it's authenticated by neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists, that most brain cells are formed by the 7th month of gestation. And after birth, neurons differentiate, migrate, increase connections, and are pruned. The brain synapses that you do not use are the ones that are pruned. So if you were a major in mechanical engineering, you got rid of music and all the rest of the stuff, and you went on to mechanical engineering. The early years are the ones that perform the formation of the core by passing information from neurons to neurons, prolificating some connections and pruning others. Your speech is generally pruned by 4 or 5 years of age. Is that my time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I was faster at home. Okay, can I just say one more sentence? Okay, maybe 2.
Well,
Okay, the big problem is until age 8, the children cannot think logically. And I'm emphasizing what this gentleman said before. This is what they cannot do. They cannot think logically. They cannot distinguish reality from unreality or make-believe. They make decisions on how things look and are egocentric thinkers generally. So correct instruction children learn from these abilities is not what they need. They are egocentric people, and they think as they think, and it doesn't make any difference what you think. Now, at
Thank
about
you.
age 8,
I'm
sorry,
I'm
but at
sorry,
age
yeah.
8, they start with logical thinking or before. Thank you so much.
we appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Next time.
Okay. Yes, come again. We appreciate you coming. Next on our agenda is Ravita Rockman.
One Wilco is a 501(c) grassroots community of parents of all races, religious backgrounds, and political spectrums actively supporting teachers, families, and students of color in this community. We started this journey unofficially in 2018 and officially in 2020, and it continues today. We show up for families who've been impacted by policies or have observed inconsistencies in current policies. We are grateful for our school board, and we are grateful for WCS and the work that you are doing. We campaigned for an effort to see more equitable practices to make our district even better, and we heard some schools even shared during their school assemblies what the discipline policy was so that every student recognizes the consequences of their actions. One Wilco shows up to be engaged and a part of the process rather than a deterrent. Our hope is that this year we will all end with lower numbers in bullying and racial harassment than last year to progressively show improvements because there's always room to grow. One Wilco is grateful for the Williamson County Schools, and we will continue to be alongside you to ensure that all kids, particularly Black and brown students, are being treated with honor and respect that they deserve. We're excited about this school year, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who came to speak tonight. We really appreciate your engagement and feedback. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So we'll start by taking a motion. Thank you, Mr. Welch. Do we have a second? Mr. Priya, thank you. Any discussion on this item? And if not, we'll move to vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, and the board unanimously approved the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. And I will go ahead and make note that during our work session, there was discussion about item number 4 on the consent agenda. There was some concern around the agenda's, yes, being applicable. Go ahead, Bobby, what was it? It's Bobby Live, yeah.
The question came up at the work session whether the new law that was just passed by the General Assembly concerning public comment in certain meetings, the question came up whether the new law requiring public comment would be applicable to the work session. We took a look at it. We don't believe it is. It's not, you don't have any actionable items on your agenda, so it would not be applicable to that. That's it.
Thank you, Bobby. There was another item number 14, that had a typo that was corrected. So thank you for raising those items during the work session. And if we do have a motion, we can go ahead and proceed to a vote. Do you have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Clemens. Do we have a second? Mr. Galbraith. Okay. Any comment or discussion? Okay. Let's move to vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. And with that approval, we did approve the June 19th, 2023 school board meeting minutes, and we approved a host of board policies, first and final editorial changes. And those are board members' legal status, school board meetings and work sessions, notification of meetings, agendas, emergency preparedness plan, the threat assessment team, which is a new policy, security, summer instructional program, application and employment, employment of retirees, the sick bank for teachers, family medical leave, physical assault leave, staff rights and responsibilities, zero tolerance offenses, alternative education, student surveys, analyses, and evaluations, physical examination and immunizations, student club activities and organizations. Next item, and we also approved outstanding purchase orders, the annual agenda for 2023-2024, approval of sick leave, bank trustees, request for lease of cafeteria at Perry Creek Elementary School by One Heart Ministries International, and recommendation for field trip fee requests. Just a small consent agenda. Okay, next item on the agenda is the communications to the board. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the community, for being here, and especially those of you who shared in public comment. I want to give a little bit of a reminder of what we talked about at our work session in my superintendent's report. We spent some time talking about the great opening that we had to school, and especially a thanks to those faculties and staff at our new schools, Amanda North Elementary School and Arrington Elementary School, and those schools that hosted a number of those grades that first week before that first day of kindergarten when we were able to get into the building. So thank you all for that. I encourage you to check the videos out from our two new schools. Their first day of school, it was pretty great. We also talked about staffing, especially bus drivers. We know that bus drivers are our number one challenge right now, and that's a common challenge across our region. And even if you look at the search engines, you can find national stories about it. And I know that we've done some things in the short term to address that, including some specific work with our recruiting and our training program, but also strategically through our strategic planning process. We're going to be talking about that and talking about issues like school start times in the context of our staffing, as well as some other contexts that I know you all have talked about in the past. So I do want to encourage our community to stay tuned to those discussions as we continue to try to grow in how we serve everyone. Also, we mentioned our special education teachers assistants. That is our next biggest challenge. Right now, they're staffed at about 88%. And that sounds great when you talk about a percentage, but when you talk about actual people, that's close to 60 short, in the high 50s. And so we continue to recruit our special education teachers assistants, what we sometimes call paraprofessionals, for those very important specific services to our students with disabilities. So we continue to work. On the teacher side, our general education staffing is substantially better even than it was last year as we started the school year. So I'm very proud of our Human Resources Department and our principals and our recruiting staff in their recruiting work. We continue to have a challenge with special education teachers. We know that that's a significant shortage in the Middle Tennessee area, especially as Middle Tennessee continues to grow. So we continue to work with some local colleges, with the State of Tennessee Department of Education, even with our Grow Your Own programs, where some of our teachers' assistants who have an opportunity to finish school or maybe get a specific teacher certification even after they have an undergraduate degree, go and get their teacher's license to be a special education teacher. I will tell you that that particular program is keeping us going with special education teachers. It's not the solution. It is not the correction, but those programs that our local universities are working on are keeping us afloat with that. We continue to work on that challenge, and we'll be continuing to brainstorm that also through our strategic planning process. As you all know, our community spent a lot of time last year setting those standards up. We also talked about two key focus points that we have for this year with our faculty and with our school administration: growing in student learning and a safe environment for all our students. And we spent a good bit of time talking about physical security. I think you all know that our state legislature spent a good bit of time in the previous legislative session passing some laws on safety, and a lot of that was a result of some conversations that they had with schools. Threat assessment teams, the importance of access control. A lot of those topics were discussed in the previous legislative session, and we are implementing a lot of that. In that access control especially is an important issue to us, especially this year. So you may see, and you will see, and our families will see when they come to schools, that we have one entrance, and all our visitors will go through that process to ensure that there's a purpose for their visit to make sure our students are safe. We do want volunteers in the building. I want to make sure that that is not lost as schools across the state and across the nation continue to work on improving school safety. Encourage folks to become our Tier 3 volunteers. That includes a fingerprinting process. We've had that process in place for close to 10 years. And it's worked well for us. And we thank literally the thousands of volunteers who have gone through that process to work with us to improve student safety and still serve our students in the best way possible. So we encourage folks to do that. I mentioned the state legislature in the previous legislative session. We know that the legislature just started a special session today. As of last Thursday, I think I said there were 27 bills at the time in the House and 6 bills introduced at the Senate. More were introduced on Friday. I actually don't have a current count, but they have a number of committees that they'll be going through over this next week. And we talked about encouraging them to, at all times in this legislative session, think about student safety and have those conversations with an aim towards student safety. We know that we can't take a break from that. Every day, every minute, we need to be working on that. And we know that human effort can't be perfect, but it has the potential to be complete if we all work together. And to that, we spoke to the importance of our entire community working together for student safety. We launched a campaign right as school started, informing our parents of some of the most common challenges we had with student safety in the past year. It includes threats. It includes misuse of cell phones with inappropriate texting. And we are going to continue to talk about that over the school year and encourage folks to look at some of those quick public service announcements. together with our sheriff's office, with our local district attorney's office, with our juvenile court, with the Department of Children's Services, and especially with our parents and students. It's important for us to have that talk about student safety. So parents, we ask that you continue to be aware and proactively talk to your children about threats. Even a joke is and must be taken seriously, because we can't determine whether it's a joke or not without investigating. So that was a big focus of our discussion at our work session. Also, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that a lot of good is happening on our campuses. The sports season is before us. We had a number of high school football games, girls soccer, middle school tennis is occurring right now, and many other sports. We're excited about that. Also, I think you saw this just before the school board meeting started with our arts. Our arts programs are going strong. Franklin Brass Ensemble performed for us right before the board meeting. And it's funny, I made a comment to Dr. Allen as I was sitting next to him listening right before they started. I said, I wonder how tubas are going to sound in this little bitty room that we have. It was pretty wonderful. I encourage you to go out and listen to our excellent art students over the course of this school year. Some pretty wonderful things are happening here in Williamson County Schools. Finally, I want to welcome the principals that we have here, and I hope I caught everyone's face as I look through here. Jennifer Calvert from Nolensville High School is here. Katie Hill from Page High School. Rebecca Laffey from Kinrose. Kate Donnelly from Walnut Grove, and Michelle Contich from Lipscomb Elementary School are here. So thank you all for being here as representatives of our excellent administrative team. So with that, I am ready to introduce to you Carol Birdsong, who will share some student and staff spotlights. Even this first meeting of this school year, we already have student and staff spotlights.
We are starting the school year off with some student spotlights for sure. Now, these are from over the summer, but we do have 7 students that we are celebrating for perfect ACT composite scores. And we're going to start at Brentwood High School with Charlotte Landman. And then also from Brentwood High School, Todd Glenn. From Centennial High School, William Mayer. From Page High School, Anna Avery. Also from Page High School, Auckland Merliteren. Also from Page High School, Riley Osborne. And Divya Shavasta from Ravenwood High School. And as a team, this is your first place in the Tennessee Science Olympiad from Ravenwood High School. Their coach/teacher is Avril Burstetta. So congratulations to all of our students.
Madam Chair, that's my report.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations already to the students. And that is just noting that's composite. That's one test, not the super score. It blows my mind. Okay, board chair report. I just want to acknowledge again the brass ensemble that came from Franklin High School, and I know you guys can't see this, but they made the cutest card for us, and we'll pass that around so the board can see it. But they all signed this, so we'll pass it this way, and you can pass it back. We have some new business to address tonight. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the General Purpose School Fund Amendment Carry Forward Reserves in the amount of $127,608. Mr. Golden? who knows?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This and a number of items coming right after this are related to carrying forward some of our funding related to a difference between the budget year for us starting July 1 and the federal budget year starting October 1. So that is this particular carry forward request.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Ms. Cypria? Mr. Wimberly, you second? Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Okay. Mr. Golden, we have your recommendation.
Recommend approval.
Board members, we can proceed to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. And the board just approved the general purpose school fund amendment for carry forward reserves. Next item is the general purpose school fund amendment of Safe Schools grant carryover in the amount of $193,531. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is some state grant money for safety that includes some of the work we've been doing related to improving our safety on our campuses. This is carry forward for some funds that have not yet been spent out of that grant that need to carry forward to the following year.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Mr. Beasley? Thank you. Ms. Cleveland is the second. Do we have any discussion?
Superintendent's recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a recommendation?
Recommend approval.
We can proceed to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. With that approval, we did approve the Safe Schools grant carryover in the amount of $193,531. Next item on the agenda is the General Purpose School Fund Amendment Transition Grant carryover in the amount of $62,000. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the October 1 federal budget year for service to students with disabilities for a transition grant.
Do we have a motion? Ms. Clements? Mr. Cash, thank you. Do you have any discussion on this item? Mr. Golden, your recommendation?
Recommend approval.
Thank you. Board members, we can proceed to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Check. Oh, no. Thank you. With that, we approved the general purpose school fund amendment for the transition grant, $204,000. Next item is the central cafeteria fund amendment for the supply chain assistance grant in the amount of $1.3 million. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Likewise, this is a supply chain assistance grant for our food service department that includes federal funding to address the increased expenses related to supply chain.
Thank you. And do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr. Elliott? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wimberly. And do we have any discussion?
Point of order.
Yeah.
Superintendent's recommendation.
We get that after the discussion, and then we'll move to vote. Bobby?
That's,
Yeah.
That would,
he right before.
Yeah. Mr. Wimberly, do you,
well, I guess point of order is, that's not the way we normally do it.
We've got the procedure right here. Next item, do we have a motion? Second, open the floor for discussion. No discussion, further discussion. Mr. Golden's recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no discussion, Madam Chair, I do recommend approval.
awesome, thank you. Board members, we can move to vote. Oh, sorry, did we? Which one are we? This is the supply chain assistance grant, 1.3.
I think we skipped one of the transition grants.
We did. Transition grant carryover.
Number 4. We'll come back to it after.
Okay, got it. The 200, it went from the 62 straight to the central. Okay, cool, we'll come back to the 204. Okay, thank you.
But this is 4 that we're voting
Doing
on right
number
now.
5.
Well, no, we're actually voting on 4.
Yeah. On the screen, it's showing the 4 points, but.
If I may, Madam Chair, and Mr. Cook, could we read through number 4 since it's already up on there?
Correct. Do we have a motion or second on the last one? Okay.
Yes.
So, could you remove the second? Whoever was the second?
Yeah.
Who was your motion?
So we had Mr. Cash and Mr.
You okay
Wimberly.
to remove your motions? We're on the wrong item. We're going to go back and do number 4.
Okay, so we'll go back and do the general purpose school fund amendment for the transition grant, the $204,000 grant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, again, based on the October federal budget schedule. I'll hold off on recommending approval until we hear if there are any discussion points.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have Ms. Apriya as the motion and Mr. Duckworth as the second. Thank you. And then open floor for discussion. Okay. Okay, no discussion. Mr. Golden?
Recommend approval.
Thank you. Okay, now back to number 5. Just had that one up on the screen. Okay, perfect. So we just, yeah, okay. So we just heard Mr. Golden talk about the Central Cafeteria Fund Amendment for supply chain. Yeah. What? No, do we know? Oh, sorry. Let me do that. Thank you. My bad.
A long summer vacation.
Yeah.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
With that, we just approved the General Purpose School Fund Amendment Transition Grant in the amount of $204,000. Now on to number 5, the Central Cafeteria Fund Amendment Supply Chain Assistance Grant, $1.3 million.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a repeat, this is the food service grant for logistics.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on this? Mr. Mitchell, thank you, and Mr. Cash, thank you. Do we have any discussion? It was Mr. Cash. Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Okay, thank you. Mr. Golden?
Recommend approval.
Thank you. Board members, we can proceed with the vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. That was in unanimous approval of the Central Cafeteria Fund Amendment for the Supply Chain Assistance Grant in the amount of $1.3 million. Next item is the approval of the Capital Projects Education Fund intra-category transfer for Page Middle School in the amount of $70,000. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to move funds out of contingency back to the appropriate contracted services fund where it had previously been based on a invoice coming in late for the Page Middle School project.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Mr. Cash? Thank you, Mr. Brown. And do we have any discussion? Okay. Mr. Golden?
Recommend approval.
We can move to vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. With that unanimous approval, we approved the Capital Projects Education Fund intra-category transfer for Page Middle School of $70,000. And the final item on the school board budget list is the approval of the Education Capital Projects Fund transfer for the GPS transfer to capital projects for capital needs in the amount of $3.2 million. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for funding for items for which we had originally made a capital request of the County Commission. The Commission reduced our total capital request of $16 million and changed to an even $13 million based on the projection of the additional funding we received from the state with the new TISA model. So based on that, we've made a request to you for the particular items that you had already approved in the capital to shift that to funding from our operational funds.
Super. Thank you. Do we have a motion? Mr. Ha? Thank you. And Ms. Cleveland? Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Mr. Golden, do you have a
I
recommendation?
do recommend approval.
Thank you. Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Board just passed the approval of the Education Capital Projects Fund transfer to capital projects in the amount of $3.2 million. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of ESSER 3.0 proposed plan for the remaining funds. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dating back to 2021, the federal government included some ESSER 3.0 funding that's to be spent over the course of 3 years. It also requires a 6-month review of those funds. We received a grant of $5.2 million for that ESSER relief, which includes as one requirement that it be approved by the state, and it also includes a portion of the funding to address what was described as learning loss back then. We are now in the 3rd year of that, and we have a request for you to approve this next 6-month process, and you can see the detail in the memo related to that request.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Hall. And a second? Mr. Mitchell, thank you. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Brown?
Jason, just one question, and this is more of an estimate on your part, but what amount of this $5 million in the ESSER 3.0 do you anticipate could potentially be an ongoing budget item that we would have to account for post-ESSER in our operating budget?
Thank you for the question. Somewhere around 85 to 90% of the spending we have included for interventionists. So before this funding was here, we were in the process of adding interventionists in our schools to address what we describe as RTI, Response to Intervention, which is a state-required program. We were able to get interventionists in quicker with this plan, than our original staggered plan. So we were able to go a little bit quicker with staffing. We are going to have a discussion about the use of licensed teachers in the interventionist position. The state does not require the interventionists to actually be licensed. So we will be doing that evaluation this school year prior to us making decisions for our budget request for you that will come early this spring. So to answer your substantive question about the number, we don't know yet because we are still yet to do our evaluation on whether the cost of the interventionist is appropriately a licensed teacher or some reduced cost. So we do anticipate we will need the positions, but we don't have an estimate yet of the actual cost.
But fair to say that a significant percentage of that would be carryover, would need to be funded through ongoing operational budget? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that we've exchanged I know that we exchanged some emails today about the funding and the counseling program, and I know this is just a small percentage going to counseling. Clarify again, I think I'm correct on this, the STARS is a parent opt-in.
That's correct. We do offer STARS counseling services at our schools, and we have for a number of years. It includes a parent choosing that service from the STARS counselors, and this funding for this year of $164,821 would increase the amount of time the counselors were available. In other words, to create some slots for appointments. And so it would include recommendations to parents. Parents make the decision whether they want those counseling services or not.
Thank you for the discussion. Mr. Golden, do you have a recommendation?
I do recommend approval.
Thank you. Board members, we can move to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Board just unanimously approved the ESSER proposed plan for remaining funds. And next item on the agenda is the board policy for first reading. And this is the Code of Conduct. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. After discussion administratively and with some of you as board members about the Code of Conduct policy, which was substantially changed before the beginning of last school year, we are recommending an adjustment related to restorative conferences, rather than have a reference to those in each. Put that at the beginning for clarity's purposes. And I'm going to specify that school administrators under this policy language are encouraged, when appropriate, to implement a restorative student conference in addition to the assigned disciplinary consequences. So that's the proposed change that is here for first reading.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Ha, and thank you, Mr. Beasley. Do we have any discussion? Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On? Okay. Jason, so I guess my kids have been a part of these conferences from time to time on both sides of the conference, unfortunately. But I'm just interested to understand when, as appropriate, a time in which, I mean, obviously you're going to be looking at the welfare of both students, but and I guess tell me about a time where out of respect for the victim that they wouldn't have a conference just because it would be too traumatic or whatever to have the victim kind of sit in the same room with the, just depending upon the circumstances.
Thank you for the question. I think your description of it really gave a good example there, where there is a determination that it might be too traumatic. There might be a bullying situation where there's an unequal relationship, and it might be appropriate to have a conversation with the student who is being disciplined and not have a conversation between the student and the victim. I would like to look over at Dr. Webb, and if there's anything else she'd like to add related to that. Okay.
Thank you. I was just verifying that's part of the consideration process. Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Golden, do you have a recommendation?
I do recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Board members, let's proceed to vote. Oh, it says Esser.
This is this.
Yeah.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
And it does say Esser on there, but is that just because that's our view? Okay. Okay. Okay, got it. So, good. So the board just unanimously approved the first reading of the Code of Conduct. Okay, and the final item on the agenda is the appointment of School Board Ethics Committee. And the Ethics Committee is something that needs to be elected by the board on an annual basis. And I've recommended that Jay Galbraith, Sheila Cleveland, and Rick Wimberly sit on this committee this year. And so this is just something that the board will vote on. And if you elect these 3 members of this committee, they'll convene to elect a chairperson of that committee. And then they would only meet as a committee if they received a complaint that necessitated the need for the committee to convene. Okay. And if we have any discussion, well, we'll go ahead and open the floor for a motion. Thank you, Ms. Apriya. And do we have a second, Mr. Brown? And we can open the floor for discussion now. Okay.
Point of order.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but what we are looking at is not what you're talking about. We're still one behind. If you look on the screen, it says new business, board policies, first reading, code of conduct. Okay, thank you.
And yeah, Mr. Wimberly's talking about our voting screen. Yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, Mr. McNeese did not have his microphone on. I want to make sure that there's a record of this on the recording. He said it was a typographical error, and you will be voting on the appointment of School Board Ethics Committee item.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Board members, any discussion on this agenda item? Okay. Super. Do we need a recommendation from Jason on this one? Okay. Jason, you're welcome to make a recommendation on this.
I do recommend approval.
Thank you. And board members, we can proceed to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
And with that vote, the board approved the 2023-24 School Board Ethics Committee, represented by Jay Galbraith, Sheila Cleveland, and Rick Wimberly. And that is the end of our agenda, and we thank you so much for being here, and we are now adjourned.